Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Queppet, and I'm here to help you sharpen your masculine edge. And in this video, we're going to be talking about virility and the Universal Man. So really, what I'm looking to do in this video is to kind of trace the path of the understanding of virility and how that interacts with masculinity. So virility, in one sense, it means kind of masculinity and masculine power and that sort of thing, vigor and whatnot. But it also means fertility, the ability to reproduce, the ability to produce good fruit, either in the explicit sense of siring good offspring, or maybe in a broader sense of being like economically or creatively productive. So if we wind the clock way back, we can kind of start our discussion with what I call the Primal Man, okay? And the Primal Man, this is your typical caveman, all right? And his relationship to virility is, pretty much he's concerned with passing on his genes. And the reason he's concerned with it is because his instincts make him concerned with it. He wants to reproduce. He's horny. He, maybe not even thinking about how, oh yeah, I want to leave a lasting mark on this world. But his instincts are thinking that, his genes are thinking that. And so they drive him to, search for those reproductive opportunities. But back in these caveman times, things were pretty rough. It was fiercely competitive, at least you can imagine it was. And in order for this primal man to be successful, he had to be extremely dominant and, in many cases, physically strong, because that was the rule of the jungle, as it were. The person who was strong enough to fend off predators and other males, he was the guy who got to pass on his genes. Now, a lot of guys in the masculinity sphere, they really kind of idolize, I think, this primal man in a lot of ways, mostly because there's a lot of characteristics of the primal man that the modern man seems to lack, namely this kind of dominant, assertive mentality, and sometimes, lacking this physical strength, which we naturally find appealing and that sort of thing. But there were major issues living as the primal man. Namely, this was kind of a horrible way to live in a lot of senses. I mean, like, imagine going to sleep and worrying if Grok from the cave down the street was going to come over and murder you in your sleep and, rape your wife. Like, well, this is kind of that harsh, no holds barred competition of the primal man. And I think collectively, as we lived in that time period, the assumption is that we decided, hey, this is a pretty crappy way to live. Let's try and institute some general rules for how we can all get along a little bit better, so that maybe I can reproduce and you can reproduce, and we can all be fertile and happy and pass on our genes and satisfy our instincts. And this is the beginning of what I call the traditional man. The traditional man is basically a man who was bought into a social contract, in a sense. So that this social contract was, hey, you follow these specific rules of this society, then you're going to be able to be a productive member of this society. You're going to be able to gain access to women. You're going to be able to contribute. You're going to be able to share in the shared contributions of everyone else and that sort of thing. And what's interesting here is that we have a big shift in this virility, this fertility mentality at this point, because the primal man, who's super concerned with just his personal reproduction, his personal fertility, it now gets expanded. He is now partaking in enhancing the fertility of his group as a whole by building this stronger group unit. And maybe he wasn't consciously aware that he was doing this. Maybe he was still looking out, for number one. But he found out by sacrificing some of his freedom, like his ability to, rape and kill and do whatever whenever he wanted, he gained many more benefits that overall increased his, personal fitness. So we've got this growth from obsession with just personal virility to, virility of the society as a whole being a thing. Now, the societies that did this, and did this well, they really, really thrived. The more sophisticated their cultures became, the more sophisticated that kind of social contract became, the more stability and ability the society gained. And so this is where big civilizations came from. And while this was a much better situation than the Primal Man in many ways, there were still some issues. Part of the issues were that many of the rules and ideas of the society that you kind of had to buy into, they were kind of developed unconsciously. They were developed in kind of this ad hoc, let's make it up as we go sort of way, because, they didn't know any better. And so there was a lot of irrational and maybe not so good stuff lumped in to these traditions. So going through the 18th, 19th, 20th century, a lot of these traditions have been seriously challenged, by the modernist movement, but more even explicitly by the postmodernists and many of the feminists. And what they've done is that they've kind of seen problems in these traditional structures, in many cases neglected the value in these traditional structures, but they focused on the problems and they really tried to do their best to kind of tear them down, to destroy them. So this, includes deconstructing, everything from religion to gender roles to anything like that, and kind of just saying it's all just a social construct, it's all made up, it's all bullshit, throw it away. Vastly simplifying here, but generally, if we're going to take the more vocal elements of it and generalize, I would say that's kind of what happens. Just throw away all this traditional stuff. We don't need it. Now, some of the fallout of that, along with some advancements in science, have led to a very strange place for this modern man. Because this modern man now lives in a place where there is no more definition of masculinity. But then on top of that, the sexual landscape has changed dramatically. And sex itself has moved completely, has become completely disconnected from fertility in many ways. Because of the introduction of birth control, sex is now primarily seen as a form of recreation. And, secondarily, if you want, it can become, the fertile act that it, prior had always been. So this modern man, what I see has happened is that many of the modern men, because of these changes in landscape, this, deconstruction of the traditional ideal of masculinity, the removal of any sort of environmental hardships that make the primal element of masculinity kind of void, and then the institution of birth control and the change of the sexual culture, I believe all this is kind of combined to create what I call the masturbatory man. Now, the masturbatory man is radically different from men from previous parts in history because he is completely unconcerned with passing on his genes, at least in a large part, it seems, because he doesn't have to in order to get to satisfy his baser instincts, to satisfy his sex drive. So on one hand, we've got this sort of what I would call maybe the repressed masculine, and he's the stereotypical basement-dwelling porn addict and video game addict. Okay, so instead of having to go out and have real sexual interaction with women and that sort of thing, he instead can just jerk off to porn. Additionally, instead of having to learn how to provide, learn how to interact with the world, learn how to provide value, and engage with others really to gain a sense of worth, he can just play video games. And, I was stuck very much in that sphere for many years. And it's a perfect kind of like Neverland. You get to be, this Peter Pan who, gets to just have sex in your virtual harem and then go slay virtual monsters, all within the convenience of your own home. I see this masturbatory man as a major problem. At least I know for me, well, one, it's not ultimately satisfying. It's stimulating, but very far from satisfying. But then on top of that, it contributes to a masturbatory culture as a whole. And when I say masturbatory, I'm referring to explicitly masturbatory in the sense of, jerking off, but I'm also referring to a masturbation on the level of, mind, body, and spirit. So like the masturbatory man, he's not just this basement dwelling video game porn addict kind of guy. He can also be that businessman who just keeps making money, hoarding money, and never actually producing anything of it, never actually producing more goodness to share with the world at large. I would say it also includes kind of that pickup artist, that guy who's learned how to manipulate women, usually who have lower self-esteem, into sleeping with him, and he just goes around trying to get more notches on his belt, trying to chase after that stimulation, that excitement, without ever taking the steps toward building a good family, building a strong relationship that you can build a good family around, which I would argue is one of the best ways in which you can benefit yourself and the world at large. So it's like this masturbatory man is just the infertile man, the infertile on all levels. He doesn't produce anything of value. He just kind of consumes, and it's an easy way to live, because in many ways that's kind of the path of least resistance for most of us. It's like if you don't think about things too much, you'll just kind of end up living like that, and it's not satisfying. You will ultimately end up feeling empty. You'll feel like you're missing out. And I know because I've been there, and I know because I've worked with thousands of men at this point who have been there, and they want out of it. So this, in many reasons, is why I started this project. I see the universal man as the answer, the alternative to living as this masturbatory man. And this universal man, he seeks to become virile. He seeks to become fertile in mind, body, and spirit. And what this means is that he tries not to engage in all this masturbatory stuff. He tries not to just feed himself empty stimulation for the sake of being stimulated. And instead, he seeks to align his pleasure with the things that lead to goodness, not only for himself, but for the world at large. So in an explicit sense, this means, don't jerk off. Okay? Don't be a porn addict. Stop living in this fake crap and start, getting out into the real world, meeting real women. But also this means don't fall into the trap of just empty, meaningless sex with a bunch of women. I mean, it sounds maybe exciting at first if you've never experienced it, but it's empty. If I can promise you that you're not going to find any lasting satisfaction in that. Because ultimately, I think in order for anyone to feel satisfied, they have to feel like they're building something. They have to feel like they're investing in something that goes beyond themselves. Because if the only thing that you're serving is yourself, then you can only be as satisfied as you are pleasured. And, no matter what path you take in life, you're going to try and maximize pleasure and minimize pain. But you're never going to be able to get all of the pleasure all the time, and you're never going to be able to get rid of all of the pain. And so here's the proposition that I have for you. Like, if you take this path of being a universal man, then where you're focusing on, universal fertility, that's kind of the arc here. We've gone from interested only in your fertility, interested only then in the fertility of yourself, and maybe helping society a little bit if you have to universal fertility, where you try to really focus on doing the things that are fertile for yourself, mind, body, spirit, and fertile for the world in that way as well. But if you do this, if you take this path, then you're going to be able to have at least satisfaction and meaning when the pleasure isn't there. And that's kind of the crux of it. It's like you live as the masturbatory man. Yep, you're going to have ups and downs in pleasure. But when you're down in pleasure, when you're in that pain category, you've got nothing. You've just got raw pain and emptiness. But if you're investing into bigger things, better things, more meaningful things, then when the pain is there, guess what else you have? You've got meaning, you've got purpose, and you've got something that makes this suffering worthwhile. I mean, in the most obvious sense, think about the family unit. When you're struggling at work and you've got no one that you're helping support, whatever, and it's tough and it's hard, then it just seems pointless. It's like, why am I doing this? But if you got a family that you're supporting, all of a sudden that suffering has meaning, and you get to go home and hopefully, love those people and be loved by them. And it's the same for, everything else, really. It's like, I love this work, and it's not easy in many ways. It's very difficult sometimes, but it's important to me. And it's important to me because I feel like it helps. And I feel like it helps because people tell me that it does, and that's incredibly rewarding. So it's like, find these things, produce good fruit, live as a universal man, and let go of your attachment to empty pleasures. Those things that just don't really bring you anything other than a high in the moment. And in order to do that, it's tough. It's very tough to make this transition from the masturbatory to the universal man. But that's, what this project is about. It's about equipping you really with the tools to make that transition. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time talking about those things. But before that, I just kind of wanted to set the stage to give you maybe a clearer picture of where this is all headed and why I'm taking it that way. So, hope you like this video. Let me know if you want to hear more about those different kinds of man. I covered like the primal man, the traditional man. You could even look at the feminized man and compare them to what the universal man is. Like, there's more to say about all that. So let me know if you want to hear that, or if you've got any other ideas you would like to see me cover. Thank you for watching. If you like what I said, please like, subscribe, go to Universal Man, sign up for my newsletter. And until next time, stay sharp.